Humundi from Belgium. And we have speakers from my right. We have Ogwuche, Senior Counsellor, Permanent Mission of Nigeria at the WTO. We have Jonas, Jaccard, Policy Officer of Humundi. We have Helene, Board Leader, Handelskampanjen. Pronunciation is very difficult for me. And we also have Ranja, Sengupta, Senior Research Officer and Head TWA and Third World Network India Trust. And this is me, Maruf from Bangladesh. I represent Post Foundation here. Thank you everyone to join this session today. We will actually try to look into that how the small scale farming are contributing. Let me remember one thing. An Indian farmer said once in a rally that the world we are living right now have a lot of technologies. We have quite an advancement of technology. But it really doesn't matter how far we go in technologies. We will not be able to download the food from internet, or maybe we will not be able to get our food by 3D printing. We have to grow it. So this is the whole idea of agriculture. And from the day one of agriculture in this world, that people need food to live, and living on this earth is one of the most basic rights. So this is the whole idea of agriculture. But at the point we are right now standing in this world, it is really difficult for the farmers, particularly in the developing countries, the least developed countries, particularly the small-scale farmers whose main focus of growing food is just to live, not any profit, not any business or anything else. So okay, I'll not take much time. First, I want to invite Mr. Ogwuche, Senior Counsellor of Permanent Mission of Nigeria at the WTO. Mr. Sunday is quite a long experience, 17 years experience of negotiating, analysis, modeling, and designing the trade and investment policies and agreement. Currently, he is the African Group focal point official on the WTO agricultural negotiations. He represents Nigeria in the WTO Council for Trade in Goods and its subsidiary bodies, as well as the Council for Trade in Services and its subsidiary bodies. He also represents Nigeria in respective negotiation under WTO Joint Statement initiatives on e-commerce, investment facilitation, services, domestic regulations and MSMEs, as well as in the discussions on UNCTAD and the International Trade Centers. So I invite Mr. Sunday to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the floor. For me, I will focus on some of the key challenges undermining the integration of small farmers, including cotton farmers, in developing countries into the global production and trading system, and what the WTO must contribute within its mandate to address these issues. I'll start with the continuation of unfair AMS incentives, the trade destructive use of green box and blue box, which has exacerbated concentration in global market, discouraged production, and diversification across developing countries. This continues to undermine the competitiveness and productivity of small farmers in developing countries. And so what can the WTO do? The African Group have tabled a proposal in the clause that seeks to eliminate all AMS above the minimum, as well as address the trade destructive use of the blue box. And I think that's the way forward. I don't need to begin to shed light on the number of members that have access to the AMS above the minimum. There are just 32, which is not available to all other members. There's also the issue of the increasing use of final bound AMS as product-specific support for cotton, as well as blue box support for cotton, which continue to undermine the competitiveness of cotton producers. Again, even with existing mandates, we're able to fulfill some of the commitments we made, especially in Nairobi, to provide preferential access to cotton and cotton products from LDC. That also needs to be addressed so that we can begin to address the issue of the livelihood of those poor cotton producers. There's also the issue of import surges, which causes uncertainties and volatilities in domestic markets, destroys livelihood and productive capacity, and incentives for investment in productive agriculture. So we need to address that. How do we address that? It's through the SSM. We have also tabled a proposal of SSM contained in 205 Rep 2, which is for the courts, and I hope that we're able to make progress on the issue of SSM. And then he also states that our developed members all have access to the safeguard provision under Article 5, which is not available to other developing countries. This is one of the imbalances in the rules that we feel that a review of the trading rules will help us to address. Then there is also the WTO rules that constrain the ability of developing countries to implement programs that will enable small farmers in developing countries to enhance their production and productivity, receive remunerative prices for their produce, and diversify products across a number of products. So now, what are we trying to do to address that? We're trying to push for a permanent solution on PSH. Of course, with the valid decision that we have at 2013, the limitation in terms of program coverage, product coverage, even the difficulties with the transparency and the safeguard provisions there. So we're trying to see if through a permanent solution that could also help address the issue of the productivity of small farmers. Right now, another problem again that we need to address is the growing trend of unilateral trade measures supposedly adopted to pursue environmental and climate goals, some of which go beyond national borders and have extraterritorial reach. Such measures tend to also not have any basis in international agreed standard, or science, or evidence-based. These unilateral measures cover a wide range of globally traded goods, and not least agricultural products, and will have far-reaching negative effects on export from developing and these developed countries. With the environmental impact, especially for developing countries' competitiveness, especially in Africa. I don't need to state those measures. Our host community here, the EU, they have such measures, the EU BR, even the EU CBAM, they are one of such measures that continue to undermine the competitiveness of small farmers in developing countries. Let me also say that within the UNFCCC, we have a framework that requires developed countries to take the lead in addressing climate change. We also have interest in addressing climate change issues, but they need to take the lead to provide finance and technology, which is identified in the principle of common but restricted responsibility. To date, we have not seen that. Developing countries lack the funds to cope with adaptation needs, yet they are paying the highest price has to do with climate change issue. So we need capacity building, technical assistance, environmental finance, and technology transfer. That should be strengthened so that we can be able to small farmers can be able to produce more and then begin to integrate into the international trade. There is also an issue that we need to address. That is the lack of access to technologies and ineffective framework for technology transfer. I believe technology transfer is an integral part of the TRIPS agreement, and this is very spelled out in the objective of TRIPS agreement contained in Article 7 of that agreement. Technology transfer and access to technology is crucial if we are to unlock the productive capacities of small farmers, particularly in developing countries. I think this issue can be addressed along the lines of the G90 agreement specific proposal, which is already in the WTO being considered. We also have a paper by South Africa, the 878 proposal, which is calling for the operationalization of technology transfer in the context of Article 7, 8, 40, and 6.2 of TRIPS agreement. Again, that is part of the African group has also tabled a submission to the Quad, which shed light on the nexus between technology transfer and food security, particularly with regards to increased productivity, sustainable policies. I hope I'm still within my time.
Yeah, maybe more.
So what we need to do in the WTO is to work towards facilitating the transfer and distribution of agro-technologies and products to developing countries. We also need to think of how we can foster cooperation between especially research institute in developing countries and the developed world to see how we can begin to issue of technology transfer. Capacity building is also key. The issue of knowledge sharing is also key. That way we're able to begin to think of putting in place a framework or even measures that will be able to unlock the productive capacities of small farmers and foster their integration into the global trading system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ogwuche Sunday, the Senior Counsellor of Permanent Mission of Nigeria. Yes, as you mentioned that the farmers, small-scale farmers in the developing countries need more capacity building and access to technology. So this is not, this is actually kind of historical responsibility of developed countries who are more responsible for the climate change effects than others. So maybe we will also look into that. So now I am inviting Mr. Jonas Jaccard, Policy Officer of Humundi. Humundi is actually an NGO based in Brussels, and they also work with the small-scale farmers in Europe. And so, Mr. Jaccard, please have your speech.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you for, I would like to express my pleasure being here, giving the opportunity to speak about on the name of my organization, which for 60 years I've been supporting small-scale agriculture in order to fight food insecurity. So with 84% of the world farmers cultivate on less than 2 hectares, small-scale farming is definitely the dominant form of agriculture, and this is the one who receive the lowest wages, although they can offer higher yields and greater opportunity, biodiversity outcomes than large-scale agriculture. Yet, this is the type of agriculture that are the biggest losers of the globalization of agricultural trade. So from a European perspective, I will question how the EU policies is supporting or not supporting small-scale farming and how they are trying to foster the transition towards sustainable food system and how this can be linked with WTO regulation. And I will finally sketch some recommendations about market regulation. So first of all, in the EU, small-scale farming have been severely threatened since the 1992 CAP reform, which was and the subsequent one in response to the agreement on agriculture adequacy. And to comply with this requirement, the CAP has just first put an end to price support mechanism, which used to offer farmer a minimum price to cover the production cost. So this reform caused by the inception of the WTO caused a huge fall in agricultural prices, which lead to the bleeding of small European farms that were then unable to access the new area-based form of support. According to a report by the European Parliament in 2022, between 2003 and 2016, the number of farms fell by 30% on average and by 38% for farms of less than 5 hectares. So we see that the small-scale farmings are the one that lose the most from this reform. The reform also drove European farms to really specialize in specific sectors such as cereals, milk, and straw. And these products are now key to European export and just having like really adverse effect on food security. In 2018, we organized with other Belgian NGO and we organized a campaign against the export of milk power products from Europe to West Africa. And this campaign mirrors another campaign in West Africa for the development of local milk products. And one of partners in with one of our partners in Burkina Faso, the APES. And so all the export of the European Union can have like really adverse effect on food insecurity, and they also have like damaging effect for small farmers in Europe. The farmers protest that we have seen in Europe, in many countries, as well as in many countries in the global south, are just nothing more than a European call for decent incomes. More recently, we have seen in 2014 the CAP was adopted, the second pillar aiming at greening the production. And in 2019, the Commission also adopted the Green Deal with the Farm to Fork strategy as a central piece of the legislation aiming at fostering the transition toward sustainable food system. The strategy was rather ambitious, but was facing a fierce opposition from the lobbies and the dominant farmers' union. So in the end, from the farmers' demonstration, demands for decent incomes were finally hijacked from the EU response in favor of a major abandonment of environmental regulation. I will give you just two examples. The dominant farmers' union, so basically Copa-Cogeca, intentionally maintained a narrative against the Green Deal and against any environmental regulation in order to get rid of them. Even the Green Deal, as barely been implemented, was just massively thrown out. And what is worse is that this year the European Parliament adopted the simplification of the CAP at the beginning of 2024 to throw away all these the main environmental requirements, which were already largely insufficient, but they were here. And now we just get rid of them. And the simplification, to show you, that was voted in less than a month and a half, whereas it took more than 5 years to negotiate the 400 articles of the current CAP. So for us and the peasant organization in Europe, like European Coordination of Via Campesina, this is a massive step backward for policies promoting transition to sustainable food system, and especially for small-scale farming. What this shows as well is that there cannot be any transition without support income support for farmers, and so we really stand against the common idea that farmers are by nature reluctant to adopt more environmental friendly practices, but this has to come hand in hand with better incomes. Without farming support, there is no transition. I will then one example. So what I'm saying is that if we need market support, we need income support. We then need a regulation tool. So one example of the tool I can give is about like the public stock. So public holding is a way to support farmers' income. It was developed and developing countries by offering minimum purchase price that enable farmers to increase their income. In addition, public stock reduces food insecurity and can also guide production choices by making purchase based on agroecological practices, for example. So what we saw, it's with the CAP reform, there was an abandonment of public stock in Europe. So we were expecting that European countries were not having any stocks, and quite unexpectedly, after getting rid of all this public stock program, the EU has for many years now created what they call emergency stock to deal with food crisis. One example is Germany. They have up to 800,000 tons of cereals in 2021, 800,000 tons of cereals, 100,000 tons of rice. Just to give you a point of comparison, the ECOWAS is now struggling to reach the 140,000 tons for the regional reserve, when we know that, for example, the country from West Africa are facing much more damaging food crisis than Germany at the moment. So this practice of emergency stock has proliferated in Europe since the COVID and the Ukraine crisis. And in 2023, the adoption of the Critical Entities Directive will require member states in Europe to adopt public stock by 2023 in the name of the resilience of essential services like the food system. So my point here is that the EU is very well aware about the potential of stocks and above all about the cost of not having such stock in the event of the food crisis. But wherever the EU maintains a double standard and it still refuses public stock with price support mechanism for as the developing countries are asking for. So this opposition from the EU is very detrimental to developing countries who wish to set up stocks for security reasons. It is even more unfair when we know that developing countries are just unable to purchase at international market price as EU does. So the lack of coherence between its practice just denies this right to countries that need the most. And I'll just conclude with two or three recommendations. We need to return the cap in pre-1992. So with some market support prices that guarantee a stable and decent income for farmers. This decent incomes, as I said, will also allow implementation of environmental regulations. For that reason, also we need public support for financing agriculture, reducing food insecurity, control inflation and speculation. We have seen that with the Ukraine crisis and war, we have seen so many inflation and speculation that are very, very damaging for food insecurity. And to achieve this, the EU must also support developing countries for a permanent solution on topics of holding, as according to the mandate given by the bank laws. So I will here at 10 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonas Jaccard from Humundi. As you see that we really need some of the actors in this position, like EU and other stakeholders, to act in favor of the small-scale farmers across the world for their capacity building, for their access, and so many things. Anyways, now it's time to call upon Ms. Helene from Handelskampanjen. She worked in the Norwegian Parliament as the foreign policy advisor, and her specialization is international trade policy. So we will expect some expert opinion on the situation here. So Helene, it's your time.
Thank you for the invitation to this panel. I'm representing here the Norwegian Trade Campaign, an alliance organization of environmental organizations, unions, solidarity group, and including the Norwegian Smallholders Union, in Norway, and the Norwegian Farmers Union, all family-based small-scale farmers compared to many in the rest of the world. And solidarity organization working with small-scale farmers in various countries. I'm working in the Norwegian Union as well for municipality and general employees, which has an extensive cooperation with the Palestine UAWC, Union of Agricultural Workers Committee. In the first 9th month of the current war or genocide, they have managed to contribute food packages to more than 630 people. Small-scale farmers are feeding the world. And hunger, coming from a country that always pointed at because of relatively high level of agricultural subsidies and tariff protection, Norway. A country that's so wealthy that hunger amongst its citizens because of poor policies, not poor finances, and net agricultural food input. Still, in these times of multiple crises, we need to remember that all countries, farming, agriculture, food production has one role: produce enough and culturally acceptable food, as the Human Rights Convention say, to people in a way that does not undermine the soil, water and biodiversity. There is a need that arable land are kept in production, in a way that ensure that the activities can continue into the future. 2, that each government has a responsibility to secure a preparedness to meet crisis for food security. This involves a minimum of self-sufficiency. Many countries need to secure such preparedness to produce dry lands, flooded lands, various climate conditions and changes, rich soils and depleted soils, steep mountain walls and short seasons, small fields and huge fields, seed and genetic resources within the concept of farmers' rights, and with different access to technology, including seeds, infrastructure and resources. This requires a political approach special to each country and region. This is a challenge for the WTO. What times of crisis has shown us new policies, including new trade policies, are needed. Trade is a means, not an end, and food security is a security policy. Also, in this perspective, small-scale farmers have the local knowledge and work experience to make the best of the local resources. Despite high subsidies, self-sufficiency in Norway agriculture is only about 35% on its arable land, which is about 3.5% of the country. Therefore, Norway restarts a program of public stockholding for preparedness. But Norway farmers in general owe about 20% less than general workers incomes in the country. They have no regulated working times or hours, or stand-ins when they are ill or had a break. Now many farmers give up, sell off milk quotas, more than 1,000 last year. Many stop producing, 14% reduction of farmers the last 10 years. And many cannot stop and sell the farm, as debt is so that they would be personal bankrupt if they do. Against this background, we have all reasons in the world to change the policies guiding our security policies, so that small-scale farmers are receiving policies needed to continue keeping the land in production. Small farmers feed us, and they need income and stability to do so. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I would start all over.
This is Maruf.
Yeah, good. So, my organization tried to make Norwegian government to support demands for the political right to public stockholding, permanent solution, special safeguard mechanism, SSM, and to efficiently able to react to import search, etc. This is not where we are today, and for many people in the world, it has never functioned. In 2050, it's estimated a need for doubling of food production. The trading system, since the AOA, the Agreement on Agriculture, and the WTO established, has cemented policies that have facilitated not only global division of labor, but also large-scale food production and a monopolization regarding input, trading and retail, meaning a concentration of power. It includes and facilitates a just-in-time delivery of all goods and services, including food and inputs to food production. And all small-scale farmers are price takers, not price makers. And this demands a sort of universal work amongst farmers, I think, in terms of securing that all countries can be allowed to it. Food security is, as it says, security politics, and is best taken care of by smallholding farmers and family farmers. And it should be treated as such. And I've chosen 4 elements, I believe, are to... I've chosen 4 elements I believe are key to a long-term solution if the WTO should be relevant in the future. First of all, end binding rules of removal of export restrictions. You can't have a situation where investors decide what to export if people are not fed in a country. And also public stockholding, permanent solution. And Norway has a policy of public stockholding, not yet implemented but in way, and securing domestic production and livelihood for family farming all over the country. In that light, it's hard to see the lack of open support for the Indian and plus 90 WTO countries on the public stockholding. proposal. So this is one thing that we will have. And then subsidies for inland consumption versus what is being exported. Maybe what we need to do is actually to have export subsidies, export restrictions on all subsidized products. And I would say that even in Norway, if we had reduced our subsidies, if we had reduced our tariffs, it wouldn't come from Nigeria, Mr. Sunday, I'm sure it would come from the EU, whatever happens. So that is the power relationship that is here. And then a special and differentiated treatment, especially involving special safeguard mechanisms, need to be done. So we need a WTO reform agenda that accommodate effective solutions to food security, agricultural production, and technology transfer included. And there's a need for a cooperative approach that does not leave anyone behind. This includes that reform in the WTO addresses the imbalances and integrate special and differentiated treatment everywhere, and space for production, sustainable production, meaning methods that can last for future generations, need to be a part of WTO reform. Small scale farmers are key to our security. They should not be indebted in that task nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellenbach, for a wonderful speech. And we really understand that the situation she displayed here. Now we'll listen to Ranja Sengupta, the senior researcher and head of TWN India Trust. She has been working on agriculture negotiation for a long time, and particularly she will speak on the overall situation. So I'm not taking much time. So the floor is yours, Ranja.
Thanks, Maruf, and also thanks to Post Foundation and Humundi for organizing this. So let me just get into some points that I wanted to make. And I want to start off by reminding that, when we are talking about sustainability so much, and it's kind of the theme of also this public forum, also the last one or two public forums, I think. And because I've worked a lot on the SDGs, and sustainable development, as we know, is supposed to be a balance of three pillars: economic, social, and environmental. So there's this understanding that it's all about the environment. But in fact, developing countries, after the Rio conference, developing countries fought and said that there should be three dimensions, and the economic dimension is also very critical, especially, and we know how critical it is, especially for small farmers across the global south countries. And if we remember the mandate of SDGs and SDG 2, which is the food goal, there's a specific target, SDG 2.3, which is about increasing productivity and incomes of small farmers, in particularly women, indigenous peoples, family farmers, pastoralists, and fishers, and to ensure that they have access to productive resources, natural resources, inputs, knowledge, financial services, and so on. So the mandate is very much about protecting and increasing the space for small-scale farmers and also fishers, but we are mainly talking about farmers today, and that they also can act as an agency for sustainable development. They are a major player, right? But I'll come back to this point, I think, at the end of my presentation, because we are seeing this kind of sustainable food system approach coming from EU and other developed countries, but I wanted to just link it to what the SDG mandate is at the end. And then we also, in the FAO, we have, for example, the UN Declaration on Rights of Peasants, which also recognize that peasants and small-scale family farmers working within local food systems have proven to be resilient in the context of ongoing crisis, and agroecology, which is kind of a solution to sustainable agriculture, and this is very much based on smallholder practices and realities. And there was this big conference in the FAO on the UN ROC, this declaration, and I think there were these kind of messages that peasants can continue to feed the people and could contribute to building democracies and peace if their right to natural resources and means of production are recognized and respected. So now coming to trade. Well, how does this, if we recognize that small-scale farmers can play a major role and they need the protection and support in increasing their incomes, and also therefore they will contribute to this, what I think Mr. Ogwuche was talking about, enhancing production and productivity overall. So how do now, I just wanted to look at the WTO system, but also a bit about the FTAs and investment treaties, because my topic is beyond the WTO, right? It's like all trade and also investment agreements. Yeah. So firstly, to look at the WTO, the AOA, I think now kind of almost everyone agrees that it's definitely not the best of agreements. Lot of inequity, and this is felt by whether it's developing countries, which are mainly looking at domestic food security, to agricultural exporters, to even developed countries. No one's really happy with it, and we definitely, I think, from civil society organizations definitely look at it very critically, and because it's unbalanced and unfair. And I think Mr. Sunday, which referred to the extra AMS entitlements that developed countries kind of enjoy, and which has given them massive advantage. And I think you were speaking then to the domestic support, negotiations on domestic support, which we kind of see now, and that has been the demand from developing countries for a long time to discipline Western agricultural subsidies. But now we seem to be at a pretty critical point on it, and I think looking at accepting that the AOA has many problems, what do we have on the table? So one is, of course, the negotiations on domestic support. We need fair and equitable kind of resolution to this issue, and in a I would say in a sequential manner, that those who are giving the most unfair subsidies should cut first, and not that you have disciplines on equal on all players, because that turns out to be actually unequal. Second issue I think all the speakers referred to is the public stockholding issue, and I come from India, so of course it's a huge issue for my farmers, and small farmers are 80% of our farmers in India, so it has been a major issue, and I would say, and we've seen during COVID how critical these public food programs are, and I think the major point that Jonas was also making is that without production, you cannot expect developing countries to buy all their food stocks to support their food programs in a very concentrated, volatile and speculative global agriculture market. We've seen there's massive concentration both in terms of the countries who supply there and also in terms of the companies who operate there. So therefore, for a country like us, which has huge population to feed, supporting production is not only, it's about, of course they need what you were talking about for European farmers, Jonas, is that providing the income support to farmers, and especially small farmers. So for us, the minimum support price does that, but also that without supporting their livelihoods and their incomes and production, you actually cannot hope to support even the consumption side, which we know is critical for sustainable development. And also that if farmers don't have the incomes, then how do you expect them to invest in sustainable technology, in land, and make this constructive and productive investment in production? So that would remain a challenge. I will agree that a lot of these subsidies could be better designed to meet sustainability needs, but for example, in India, I saw a figure that if we put all our agriculture subsidies together, input plus the price support, it's 20% on average of our farmers' incomes. And then if you take marginal farmers, it's a higher percentage. So we are not in a position to take away this support, because as Jonas was saying, that income support is very important for small European farmers, and it's absolutely critical for developing country farmers and small farmers. So one is the PSH, so one is domestic support, then PSH. So these issues which are on the table, I think would be good solutions, and then we really need to, and they've been kind of lagging and they've been languishing for so long, we need resolutions to that. SSN, Helene, you talked about, and Mr. Ogwuche also talked about, because when you are actually in such an uncertain situation, our farmers, like suddenly there's an import surge and they are not able to sell their produce, there's like complete uncertainty and volatility, again we cannot expect them to invest in sustainable production. And then cotton, I think Mr. Ogwuche definitely mentioned, it's a major issue for African small farmers and also in Asia. So these are some of the issues on the table in the WTO. I think quick resolution, because these are issues which are mature issues. Some of this, for example, for the permanent solution, we already agreed to the trade facilitation agreement in the Bali Ministerial. So some of these are already in a way paid for in WTO language, because you have to always pay for some to get anything in the WTO. So, but these are the solution pathways, and if these are not really resolved, it is a challenge for small farmers across Global South countries. Some other challenges which is coming maybe from the WTO, but more from the FTAs and the investment treaties. I'll just quickly highlight, because I know Maruf is looking at me, he has to manage the time. One is of course market access. It's kind of picking up again this discussion in the WTO. And also in the FTAs, all our countries are actually cutting applied import duties through the free trade agreements. And we've had major, like we already have examples of how especially subsidized products from the West have really destroyed livelihoods of small farmers. There was this fantastic paper from UNCTAD in 2007 which showed that even green box subsidies given by the West has really kind of impacted livelihoods across developing countries. So market access, how do we, and this has proved to be a major vulnerability for small farmers across developing countries, that if you expose them to import competition, when maybe your competitors have some kind more advantage in terms of like access to inputs, to massive subsidies and so on, then it is a major threat. And we've seen that, cases from Mexico to Philippines, even in India, how farmers have suffered. Another point is the investment treaties, and how it has facilitated natural resource grab and land grab, and this loss of access to productive assets is a critical issue. And you remember that the FAO discussion really said that small farmers need access to natural resources and productive resources to do their part, and this is really threatened by the investment treaties. And of course this whole issue of IP and seeds, and we see this coming in through the FTAs, through the insistence that developing countries must sign on to UPOV 1991 and so on. And in our countries, we have seen how as there is control over seed, farmers cannot. Their normal traditional practice is to exchange. They'll give a bit to their relative, to their neighbor. They'll save seeds for next year. But this massive control over seeds by seed corporations is really threatening that access to seeds, which is also a threat to biodiversity, which is promoting monoculture and so on. And I think that's a major challenge for sustainability. So overall, yes, would make an argument for policy space. And I know developing countries which are really looking at internal balance of their export interest, but domestic food security interest of livelihoods within the agriculture sector, are arguing for policy space to support small farmers and small-scale farming. And finally, as I was saying initially, if you look at the SDG mandate from Goal 2, that there is a very strong mandate to support small farmers, but we see that this, there is a certain approach on sustainability in agriculture. It's coming in big time also in the WTO, and we all have to finally, of course, produce sustainably. I think all of us recognize that, and whether it's developed countries, developing countries, everyone's trying to find those solutions. But we are having certain frameworks coming in through this sustainable food system thing, and I know that in the, for example, India has also is now looking at these sustainable food system chapters. We see this language, as I said, coming into the WTO. But so there is a certain understanding of these three pillars: economic, social, and environmental. And economic pillar is being projected as only that unit is sustainable, which does not require any subsidy, which pays taxes. So if you're not doing that, you are not sustainable. But in that case, I think we have to kick all our small farmers out because they do need subsidies and they cannot most of the time pay taxes. So they are like producing under precarious conditions. And so the mandate of SDG is not to say kick out those who are so-called economically not profitable or something. It is that you need to give them that support, that policy support, and also whatever it takes. As I mean, many of you talked about technology and financial support, maybe direct income transfers or support in whichever way to actually ensure that they continue to produce and that their small farmers as an agency contributing to a sustainable food system and sustainable production system is actually kind of realized. It's not to block them off. So I would say that I'm quite worried to see some of the blueprint coming into this sustainable food systems chapter, and it's all still being developed. It's very difficult to sometimes understand what they mean. But I mean, if this is the kind of interpretation, this is definitely against the mandate of the SDGs. We definitely need to talk about sustainable agriculture, etc., but which includes smallholders, which is not to pick out smallholders. They are part of the solution. They are not part of the problem. Thanks, Helene.
Okay, thank you very much, Ranja, and all of the speakers that you have completed your speech within the time frame. So now I'm interested to listen from the floor. I mean, if you have any question, you can ask to a particular speaker, or maybe you can ask overall, maybe one of our speakers can answer. So it's time for some question and answer. If you are interested, yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Use the microphone.
And please, I just
use the recording so we can.
For the recording, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Facundo Calvo from IST, International Institute for Sustainable Development, here in Geneva. I have one question for Councillor Sunday. He mentioned some actions that WTO members can take on domestic support, ESH, SSM, and I was wondering if in the realm of market access, classic market access, there is something maybe on tariff escalation, or I am thinking in terms of preferential market access schemes. Sometimes there are certain sectors that are excluded that may be of export interest to developing countries and to LDCs, even if I understand that this might not directly benefit smallholders, that as the moderator said at the very beginning, they are not even connected to the market, they just survive. But I was wondering if there is something on market access there. And maybe if I have the opportunity also very quickly to ask Ms. Helene on the issue of subsidies for inland consumption. How do you understand that this could work? Does this mean that, for example, if a country managed to be competitive, relatively competitive in a product, and export that product, that subsidy should not granted? If you could provide a little bit more clarification on that, that would be useful. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions? I am interested to collect all the questions and go to the speakers. Yes, please.
Hi. My name is Maria Cosmi, and I am part of the French government, and so I'm part of the EU. I am not going to ask a question, I just want to react to some of the elements that were said. I have three elements that I wish to deal with. First, I want to tackle the deforestation policy following Sunday ways of talking about it. What I just want to say is that, well, it is first of all a policy which has some environmental goal and which is addressing a global concern. And the idea with the policy is that the EU will only import goods for which we have a guarantee that they are not resulting from deforestation. And with that policy, there is a possibility for the third countries to benefit from public aid and to be accompanied in the way they will stand up to the new requirements. And then I have two other remarks, and they are following the presentation from Humundi. One is about the CAP review in 2024. I do not share the way it was presented. It is mainly a review which aims at reducing unnecessary administrative burdens, and the CAP will continue to apply in full, and the Member States and the Commission will monitor the impact of the policy using the indicators which have been decided. And lastly, the way you presented the EU policy, the EU position towards the public stockholding discussion in the WTO, I don't follow what you say. The EU is clearly in favor of public stock holding for food purposing. However, it is a policy that needs to have limits if there is a market price support included. And also it is a policy which needs some guarantees to make sure that there is no circumvention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from the floor? Or maybe I'll group the speakers then. Yeah, so first I want to invite Mr. Sanjay to respond or any more comment if you want.
Thank you very much for your question. Yeah. Yes, we have some market assets interest as well, but maybe I can just describe it as limited market assets interest. Because if you recall when I was talking about the issue of cotton, I did make reference to the need for members, developed countries and developing countries in position to do so, to fulfill their commitment, which was made in Nairobi and other ministerial conferences regarding professional assets, duty-free assets for cotton and cotton product for LDCs. But the market assets on the issue of tariff escalation, preference erosion, and all that are fine. If that can be treated separate from the broader market assets issue, perhaps we'll be interested. Because for us, sequencing must be respected. For us, sequencing means that we must first address the issue of direct support, the issue of PSH, and the issue of SSM before we can engage in market assets negotiation. Because you cannot be asking us to dismantle our tariff when the market is heavily distorted. That means that you're just trying to take away the remaining lifeline that our small farmers have. So that's just what I have to say on that market assets. Yeah. Thank you.
And then I want to ask Mr. Helene.
Yes. Then I have 4 points to it, as I have to.
Yeah, and please have within 2 minutes because we need to finish by 2:30.
Yeah, I will. Okay. On the subsidies, England, I think what we need to do is look much more into, well, you can say that the coalitions of countries has very much in the WTO has been very much along 2 lines. The one is net food exporters and net food importers. The first are lucky, they are secure. If people goes hungry, it's about domestic policies. Those politics are limited by the power balance in the country, and those restrictions our trading system put on such policies. And net food importers are extremely vulnerable. Lack of markets that offer food and lack of purchasing power may cause hunger and food insecurity, and few national policies can change that. The other lines are the net exporters that are developing countries and net exporters among industrialized countries. Net importers from developing and industrial countries that are food insecure are dependent on markets and purchasing power. The difference is that industrialized countries' net importers have better purchasing power, meaning that they can buy from others. But they can undermine the prices in terms of subsidies, as the UNCTAD report showed in that Ranja told us about. And in that sense, if you can simply say, at that time where you were exporting something, in such regulated countries as EU is, as Norway is, we know when we are exporting this one, they have got so and so much subsidies. And that is where we take an export tax and say, we will not violate the global market prices of exactly the same produce as, for example, from Nigeria. So that means that we have a food security policy, but we do not violate the trading market. So that is some of the thinking. And in that sense, I think that if we go to public stockholding, Norway has the same position as EU, but that comes that they argue, okay, public stockholding, but you purchase in the global market for market prices. But now, in developing countries, you would need to have that minimum price for your small scale farmers, and that is something that we have had the access to when we started negotiations to WTO, EU countries, Norway, and the Indian has not. So it's unfair that they are not able to balance those rules. And the circumvention of, that's a constructed argument, I think. Because simply that circumvention is not any bigger than the circumvention of green subsidies, green box subsidies that has come from countries that has changed or shifted their subsidies into green box, I think. So as UNCTAD said. So I think, and then I just have a final, very brief, the deforestation policy. We argue with it in Norway as well, as a lot of soy input to both salmon and meat production. It has that argument, we will not have deforestation. But how long time since last deforestation is needed when the soy is produced on something that was harvested or that was cut down of forest 10 years ago? So that means over time that can be greened by not being deforestation, and that's a problem that we have. You know, how do we actually ensure that it's not going to, they can just count on sell it to others that are not that observant on the deforestation, and then afterwards we can buy it as a sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene. Jonas, you want to?
Thank you for your remark. Point of EU position on public stockholding. First of all, I will join like Helene on this position. There was a communication by the African Group in 2018. The total Amber Box support for all members amounted to $62.5 billion, and the total support for Green Box support was 265 billion. So if we put like in balance Amber Box support and the Green Box support, yeah, the Amber Box support is like, I don't know, 5 times, 6 times higher. So you cannot like in comparison. Secondly, the idea of synchronization, if like the big country like China or India wouldn't have like public support, public stock. If at some point there is like a drought or a bad harvest, they will need to provide themselves on the international market. So in this condition, the price will rise on the international market. So they can have like damaging impact on other countries. So the EU is supporting the public stock, but its incrimination always go in one sense. It always go where the food security can be damaging, but they never see how the public stock in India and China can be beneficial for the other countries. So it's always in one direction and then the other. And about the CAP reform in 2024, if you see that there is only administrative burden, okay, but the thing is, my point was that after all the months of demonstration, the only answer of the EU was to reduce administrative burden, or I see more a reduction of environmental objective. But my point is they never provide an answer for support for farmers' incomes, so they didn't support it. And about deforestation policy, I still have something to say as well, because we are with other organizations, we are working on this issue as well, and there is the way the EU is seeing some definitions about how to frame the debate is already problematic. If we have like another, we call that mirror measure about like organic farming, it's the EU is framing all the definition of the debate, but it doesn't suit to the reality of the global south, and you cannot apply it for support for small-scale farmers. So anyway, and you can also have like some local corruption where it leads to a concentration of actors on the field. We have some partners in Democratic Republic of Congo that are already giving testimonies about like corruption and phenomenon of concentration on the ground. So it doesn't respond to the reality on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. And finally, Ranja, do you have any closing remarks? I still
just
have
take the opportunity to make a few more remarks, but also to respond to what Ms. Maria was saying about the EU's approach to the PSH discussion, and it's very good to know that EU is interested, and we can understand that countries want to have the safeguards that it's not misused or doesn't distort markets. The problem with the Bali peace clause, it's not clear in a way what distorts market. It's kind of ambiguous, and I think that's what also developing countries are worried about. But since for a long time, many proposals have come both from the G33 and the African group, and Mr. Ogwuche can speak much better. And we've seen proposals coming before MC12, MC13. There's this joint proposal by 80 countries, G33, ACP, and African group. So there were proposals, but we have not seen negotiations. That's the thing. It's been completely blocked. No negotiations. So we understand that it's not like it will be you put in a proposal and it's accepted. Of course, there will be negotiations. There will be finally an outcome which is kind of acceptable to all. But we have not seen the negotiations. We haven't seen the issue move at all. So in spite of the mandate for the permanent solution to be agreed in 2017 in the Buenos Aires Ministerial, since then, after the COVID years, 2 more ministerials have come and gone. We really haven't seen any serious effort on the part of the non-proponent countries to engage. I mean, I think that would show that, what you are saying, EU is interested. You understand, because EU itself has, as take my co-panelists here put, that developed countries have themselves used public stockholding and maybe abandoned or adjusted these programs for various reasons. But you understand, as you said, the value. But we would really like to see negotiations, and then we can see what outcomes, what could be the acceptable outcomes. And I very much also agree with what Mr. Sunday said about the sequencing, that some issues like, for example, PSH, SSM, and cotton, they have reaffirmed mandates from Nairobi. And so these are issues which are mature. And that sequencing, I think that you made a very good point that if the market is already distorted, how can you open up markets further, right? or we know that there's been this discussion on SSM that if it needs to be given only if there's further market access concessions, but the markets are already distorted, and that's why the SSM is already required. So some are kind of more urgent. They have agreed, reaffirmed mandates, and they need to move maybe before the others. And I'll just end with an interesting comment, because during MC13 we had posted a kind of panel discussion on agriculture, and the then ambassador of Indonesian for permanent mission, Ambassador Dandy, had spoken, and because he put it very well, so I like it, and I just want to end with that. He said that when babies are there are different babies, but they are some are mature to go to college, and so then you put them through college because they have advanced. The discussions have advanced. There's a history. There's a mandate. Others maybe you will of course send them to college sometime or the other, but maybe their time comes later. So I think that sequence thing, and also based on what actually works first. I think what Mr. Ogwuche pointed out, I would very much like to support, and let me end it here.
Thank you very much, everyone. We are almost at the end of the time. I just want to add one small thing, that it is very surprising that the farmers in Bangladesh, they produce crops. I mean, they invest in their field. Why surprising? Because the money they invest, the 40 to 50%, only 40 to 50% they can harvest, and the rest is, they are lost. But still they keep doing it. Still they are doing the agriculture. It's very surprising. And I sometimes wonder that this is the subsidy that they are giving the small scale farmers. Surprisingly, they are giving the subsidy to the, maybe, what can I say, that to the world or to the people of the country, maybe. So it is the point where the double standards stay, and we really need to look into it. So I thank you all, everyone to join today, and especially the speakers, Mr. Sunday, your time. And thanks to Humundi to support this organizing this workshop today. And Helene and Ranja, thank you very much. And thank you everyone to come and listen to us.